Welcome back, everybody. I'm Justin Sisemore. We're going to talk today a little bit about the divorce process and the key takeaways and what you should do in the beginning. I want to introduce the panel. This is Mary Maloney. She helps write everything down, get our blogs right, get us organized on this podcast. Andrea, entrepreneur, awesome business development person, been through a lot of life experiences. So we try to bring a dynamic approach, and we're going to kick it off with you, Mary. Just kind of tell us where we're going and what we're going to talk about today.
All right. So when you get served with divorce papers, you really need to act fast. So what we really want to talk about today are the different things that you should do, and critically, the first 3 steps that you should really take in that short term when you get served with the divorce papers. So you've been served. What do you do?
Yeah, so as they say, the movie says, you got served. So let's talk about what that means. And really, before we talk about service of process, I want to talk about what you need to think about if you think you're about to go through a divorce, even before the service of process. So the first thing when we're talking about getting served, what does that mean? Everybody sees the movies where the Jerry Maguires of the world, they come hand you the paperwork, and it's basically called due process. It means that you've been notified of a lawsuit, and that kind of starts the clock rolling. What we see a lot of times is people are very confused about that 20-day answer requirement. So you'll see some notifications on there that actually require you to come in and file a written answer. So the first thing you want to look at is, A, is your spouse looking, or maybe it's the mother or father in a custody case, are you thinking that they're about to go back and file? Because it can be very stressful just dealing with the concept of how fast do you have to go engage an attorney, how fast do you have to come up with money, do you have to take off work, and then really what documents do you need to get in preparation. And so I just think it's really critical if you're feeling that feeling, that's when it's really important at the consult phase to start doing your homework and research. But actually getting back to the service of process. So there's really 2 ways to do service of process in a divorce or custody setting. So the first one is what we call a waiver of service, and that's kind of the manila. We've been really nice. Here's the documentation. I'm a firm believer of there's really not a nice way to sue somebody. A waiver of service, effectually, once it's signed and notarized and given back to the attorney and filed with the court, that then kind of kicks off the process. So, that's really going to entail, we're getting along really well. We both know it's coming. We're really not worried about somebody going and bleeding the bank accounts or running off with the kids or whatever. So I still like I call it the Band-Aid approach to service, which is let's just get a process server and get them out there. If you've still got all of the prerequisites to, you're both being kind, you're both being cordial, at that point, it's sometimes okay to go ahead and say, hey, a process server's coming over to hand this documentation over. And it really doesn't get received from what we've seen that differently than potentially having a process server come. Now, you also see the people that get served at work and they get served on kids' birthdays and at Christmas. And I see the lawyers out there that try to make service a part of, I guess, their character of letting the world know how strong they are. I think it's a very cheap move. And candidly, I don't think it has a lot of impact. I think it just stokes the fire and adds to legal fees and frustration. So
And scared, right?
scared, yeah. So I just really like the idea of in the consult talking about that, and then in the follow-up consult talking about the logistics of when that's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and that's just the service piece. The main thing I want people to remember, though, is even though that 20-day situation or response time is in there, some people will hear, well, in Texas, you've got a 60-day waiting period, so they can't default you. Well, don't wait until these deadlines. Like, they're not just suggestions. You can actually get defaulted in custody cases and modifications and enforcements and things you don't know about. So if you are the type that you've been served a document and you're going to stick it over here because it's too stressful, or if you've received a waiver of service and you're just not really sure you want to sign it, you've been sued. So it's a good time, if you haven't done it already, to go ahead and consult an attorney and walk through that.
Absolutely. So there are 3 different steps, Andrea, you and I were kind of talking about that you want to take immediately if you've been served as well, or in that general time period. So, and one of them is just kind of figuring out how you're going to handle your day-to-day lives and the events that are surrounding those, like, childcare, who lives in the family home and those types of things. So could you both weigh in on that?
Yeah, so, and I'll kick it over to Andrea because I've been talking too much, but The bottom line is when you first start out and you've got really a 2-week window, and we've talked about what a temporary restraining order is and getting hearings set. Usually you're inside of about a month to 2-month period, and sometimes that can be shortened and condensed down to 2 to 3 days and 2 to 3 weeks. So when you're looking at where am I going to how am I going to take off, how am I going to get childcare, those are things that lawyers kind of often overlook and presume that, hey, you've been served, here's a notice of hearing. They don't really walk through the logistics of we're going to have 5 phone calls, or we're going to do cross-examination, or you need to get summary timelines together and these documentations together. So, I think it's really good for people and people listening here today to ask those questions. What is it going to, what does it mean after we serve? What am I going to get in response? What am I going to get together? Because it's not just the person being served. It's also the person that's serving, right? That kicks off another lawyer on the other side to kind of do their thing. So I just think that logistic piece gets overlooked, and it's just important to think about.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, and the step before that, I mean, if you feel like your marriage is on the rocks or something is potentially going to happen, I mean, you can be blindsided. You have no idea. We have clients all the time who call and say, I did not even know that this is coming. But if you kind of feel it's not going down the right way, I think the ducks have to be in a row before that. And I'm a big fan, when you feel it's coming, be prepared, meaning get some help. I think the first thing, because no matter how, I remember that my divorce, no matter how strong you are and how you're handling the kids and everything yourself, when you get served, especially for females, it's kind of like they pull the rug underneath your feet. And all of a sudden you fall into this, because security is so important for us women, and it's important for men too, but I think it's more important for women. And when that security is gone, no matter whether you did everything by yourself before, you fall into this hole. And if you know it's coming, I think it's a good idea to prepare yourself, meaning you ask around with friends and say, hey, it's not doing well. Have you ever used an attorney? Have any of your friends ever used an attorney? Referrals are key. And I think the Legal Trends report, I'll refer to that later, but the Legal Trends report said that over 70% of people do not refer an attorney because the attorney was not well received by them. So if you ask your friends and they refer an attorney, I think you can trust that even more. And so have an attorney that you talk to. We always say talk to 1, 2, 3 attorneys. Get a good idea. Sure. So have that duck in a row. But I think for personally, you need to get some help. You need to have somebody you can talk to, because it's going to be an emotional time. And if you're going to wear out your friends, if you constantly talk to your friends. I'm a big fan of counselors. So if it's coming, get prepared. Get a counselor on board to get you mentally stable, because you have to be mentally stable, especially for the kids. You need to keep your side of the street clean. So you need to also make sure you don't do anything wrong. So don't take any steps unless you talk to an attorney. I think a lot of people make those mistakes. Oh, I moved out the house because I can't stand him anymore. That has legal repercussions. So I would say, ask your friends for a good referral for an attorney. Talk to an attorney, even if you just feel it's lingering out there. Get your ducks in a row. You can talk about what you need as an attorney. Get your ducks in a row, and then get some help, counseling, and friends that are going to be on your side. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and Andrea's been through this before, so like it's really nice to hear both perspectives, like from the lawyer and clients, because I mean,
Right.
it's a totally different mindset. Like when you do something thousands of times, you kind of go, all right, they understand this, and we skip over those details as lawyers a lot. So back to your question, when you're talking about like who lives in the family home, what do you do with childcare, looking back to the finances, I mean, those are really critical, because you have very short-term and very long-term plays. So I always say macro and micro, but when we're looking at the micro or the short-term play, like what if one person's in the house and you don't have your keys, right?
Right.
Those are
Yeah.
things that lawyers don't even really think about. Well, just go to the house and kick the door in. Well, yeah, but I mean, you may not want to do that with your kids there. So
Or locked out of certain rooms that happened to me before.
yeah.
All of a sudden, you can't get into your office. You can't get into the bedroom because there's all of a sudden a lock on the door. Childish behavior, kindergarten behavior. But some people go to those measures.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I tell people, number one, after you've talked to an attorney, do not vacate the residence until you've talked to an attorney. Like, especially now, if you've been out for 6 months, don't just like kick the door back in and be like, "Hey, honey, I'm having a good night's sleep with you." Like that can cause some other issues. but when we're talking about 1 week or 2 days, or you've gone to stay at your mother's house for a minute. Really be thinking about the access points that you need to get back in. Now, obviously, if there's family violence or there's a tumultuous relationship with drugs and alcohol, we want to be thinking about safety first. But when it comes to vacating the residence. The reason that can be problematic in a documentation perspective is, like Andrea just said, all of a sudden everything gets moved out of the house, and all the documents that you thought were in your safe, the safe's not there. So, one of the injunctions we actually have is like entering safety deposit boxes. And I always ask myself, like, how did you come up with this list? Whoever came up with that list about what the injunctions or restraining orders are, and those are like the temporary things.
Can you
before get to
explain?
court.
Because I don't think everybody knows what an injunction is. Can you explain what an injunction is?
Yeah, so the restraining order, the TRO that you see oftentimes accompanied with the petition that you get served with, has a list of do's and don'ts, and it'll say like restricting someone from access to a residence, or something like diverting the mail, or going into their email and changing passwords.
And is that when I get served? Is it in the initial serving, or is that when I go to the hearing already later?
Yeah, so the restraining order, generally the general rule is the restraining order becomes the temporary injunction. So what you're getting to in a very short period of time, that's why I talk about the micro and macro. In a 2-week window, the court wants to put protections in place because a lot can happen in business and with people in 2 weeks. So they're not going to be able to get to you unless it's an emergency, at least for that time period. And that temporary restraining order basically has a list of do's and don'ts after you get served that document. So again, Mary, when we talk about waivers of service, well, if you've got millions of dollars sitting in a bank and you're just hoping that nobody goes and moves it, or if you've got somebody that has a baby, specifically with like young kids, and their family lives 4 states away, you want to have some restrictions in place that there is recourse between that timetable of getting to court in that 14-day period. So from the difference of, to your question, Andrea, temporary restraining orders that become injunctions, oftentimes that language will be very parallel.
But it's just to confirm, it's when I get served, if I get served, those injunctions are going to be in the initial serving, and they're valid right then, or do they become valid when I respond?
They're called restraining orders. They're orders that restrain an individual from certain actions. So once they receive that documentation, it was served by a process server, they're effective immediately. So when going back to the waiver of service, if you're trying to kumbaya it because you don't want to, I guess, rock the apple cart or start the war or whatever else, and you don't have that TRO in place and something goes missing, you can try to hopefully claw it back in the form of later subject or future property division, but it doesn't happen right away. Or if somebody just bounces out with your child for a month or two and you're just kind of hoping that y'all are going to get back on the same page, usually we see one party really controlling the narrative, right? So they control the child, where the child is, when they talk to you and all that. So I like to go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off and get them served with that TRO. It tells them how to act. And then there's things that I do in between that 2-week period and that my firm does, in that if you've got somebody that, let's say the court continues the case, now all of a sudden you're pushed back another 2 weeks. Well, now you got to go back up to court, get an extenuation of that TRO or continuation of that TRO because it's expired or will expire. And you need to make sure that that person is being contacted by the attorney, especially if they have counsel, to say, hey, we want to have the kid these days, right? Or the child these days, and we want to see the child. Because one of the things in the TRO is actually hiding or secreting the child from the other parent, right?
So I need to pay attention when I get served, because we're talking about like, you have been served, what do you need to do? So I need to not just put that in the corner. I need to actually read it, or have somebody help me read it to see what it says in there, the things I can and cannot do.
Absolutely. I mean, just yesterday, I did a consult with this lady, and she's super nice, and she was just like, hey, listen, he's taken off with this child, and I think we're going to work through this. And I said, well, how long has it been? She said, well, 2 weeks. And I said, well, what's your plan? And she said, well, my attorney has a notice of hearing. It was out of county. I said, well, was there any TRO put in place? Was there any? She was like, what is that? So, I mean, these are things where if you don't do this a lot and you haven't seen it a lot, you don't even know to ask.
Right.
And then you're sitting there going, well, this just seems normal, but, it's feeling like it's not very comfortable right now. And how much longer am I going to have to go through this? So I'm just really, I'm kind of hell-bent, honestly, on getting the stuff set up the right way in the beginning, and making sure those TROs are in place. Child care and those things, those are pretty simple in concept and in theory to arrange, but you really need to talk to your attorney. Like I said, how many times are we going to meet before then? Most of the stuff we do is over the phone. We do Zoom and all that. So I'm not a big proponent of having to sit in an office and wait around for lawyers or wait around for clients. I think you can do most of the things digitally now. So we can work around a lot of the child care issues, but I can't talk to you while you're 13-year-old is running in and out of the house, right? That's part of one of the injunctions or restraining orders. Don't discuss the litigation, right? Well, you'd be surprised how many people call me and they're
Kid is in the car,
they're
and I'm
doing they're doing life. Right?
yeah, we had
Yeah.
that before. I mean, the lady said
I'm
like, "Oh,
hey, is that the kid? If they
Yeah.
hurl this right there?"
Yeah, we had
And
a
I've
lady-
had spouses be on the call. I'm like, no, man, we got to have
No.
confidentiality. We need to have
Right.
separation from.
That's
We had the lady actually
crazy.
call. I think the office answered, and she had the kids just picked the kids up from school, kids in a car, and wanted to talk to you or Ashley or something. We're like,
Yeah.
please take the kids home, find a babysitter, and then if you want to lay out the entire case, we're like, please don't.
But
right?
and judge my
Right.
reaction. Like I'm like we're like that sounds crazy. Why would you do that? Well, you've been through litigation before. You're still asking questions about what a temporary restraining order is.
Correct.
I'm already presuming that you know that.
Correct.
But that's just not the reality. I mean, the other thing about your friends giving a suggestion on a lawyer, they may have had a case 9 years ago and they have Bubba saved in their cell phone.
Yeah.
Do some homework and you don't have a lot of time
Good
to
old
do it.
Bubba.
Yeah.
You know? So there's that.
So, well, I think that all goes back to the fact that, you really want to act quickly. And of course, you really want to find a good attorney, which is how we're going to kind of wrap up the podcast. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about the documents, the things that you really want to collect in those early stages after you've been served. You should collect those right away because, again, safes can be removed, you can get locked out of financial accounts and things like that. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overstate this, but I can probably do 90% of a case with bank accounts, credit card statements, and an inventory on the property side. Now, that doesn't mean, if you're doing valuations of businesses that, we don't use all that information. Obviously, we do. But the majority of households have, a house, some retirement, a few bank accounts, a couple cars, some credit card debt and whatnot. That's just kind of your typical white picket fence household. So what I'm looking for is bank statements that you don't know that you bank at, okay? And so when you're going around the house and you see something from Wells Fargo and you bank at Chase, you don't even know what that account is, and that may be something in the future that you may want to know what it is, okay? So
Right.
I'm looking for mail. I'm not necessarily telling you to go rip open every piece of mail you
Don't
have.
open the mail because
And
it's a
it-
federal,
and if you've got
federal offense.
with your spouse, there's a little leeway. But what you want to be careful of is you want to make sure that you're taking pictures and you're categorizing the stuff in the house. You're not going to have a list in an Excel spreadsheet about every spoon that's in the house, but you can go around and you can literally take your iPhone and do a scan and sweep of the house. You can photograph each room. You can go and look at all the documents that you have your hands on. You can see what passwords are on the computer because if the computer's out, you've got access to it. It's all fair in love and war. So that timetable, hopefully before you go through this, and I'm doing estate planning right now. I think it's just critical whether you're looking at divorce or whether you're just saying, hey, if I kick the bucket tomorrow, what's going to happen to my stuff? Where does it go? Are the account beneficiaries designated properly? So this is not just divorce training. This is life training. And I'm doing it right now. And it's candidly, they're giving me deadlines because of year end. So I know what these deadlines feel like. And I've got a month to go. You guys have like 14 days. So it just hits really fast and you just have to be on top of it.
That's why I said earlier, when you feel it's coming, don't wait. I mean, like, if you feel the marriage is on the rocks, unless you get blindsided, but if you feel it's not doing so well, do your homework now and then. And I did. I took pictures of things that I've never seen that before, and it becomes valuable later. And I didn't even know at that point, do I ever need it? But again, when you go down this path,
Right.
get prepared and take pictures and do all those things, because then, like you said, the safe is gone, the documents are gone. And how do I prove that I ever saw an account with Merrill Lynch that I never seen before? How do I prove that if it wasn't there anymore?
Well, and Mary, like we've talked about discovery before, but discovery takes time in a case. You're not going to get discoverable documents, which is like your request for production to produce bank statements or credit card statements. You're not going to get that early on. Okay, so when you're going into a temporary orders hearing in 14 days, and so says, who's made $1 million last year, says they're now making zero. It's your word against theirs. Okay, so.
Right.
They're ordered to bring their financial statements. They're ordered to do an income and expense statement based on the local rules in Tarrant County, for example. But they show up and then they're like, sorry, I didn't bring that. Or there's big gaps in the bank accounts. So that's what I'm looking for. My favorite client is one that comes in and says, "Hey, I've logged into all this. Here's the last year's bank statements. Here's the last year's credit card statements. This is at least our active accounts that we're working through." But some people just plan for divorce or separate their finances all the way through. So if you've had no access to that information, don't expect to gather that very quickly. But the court's got to make decisions very quickly on how you're going to live and how much they're going to give you. So if you can gather that information, it's really, really critical.
And again, the emotional thing comes at that point, because blindsided or not, there is this. I felt that too. This paralysis. You feel like I know I have to do this, but I just emotionally cannot get this done. That's why I said earlier, get some help. Have a good friend you trust or somebody that can get the stuff, help you with that. Your best friend or whatever to help you. This is what the attorney needs: is inventory and appraisement that you have to do, which is this big form you have to fill out, expenses and all that stuff. That's overwhelming for anybody. Overwhelming to who digs down their life unless you have a budget and you know everything. Most people I know don't have that.
Right.
So now you get to get all that stuff together. And if you are feeling you can't do it, have somebody you really trust that can help you and really put it together in a form that the attorney can work with. Don't bombard the attorney with 50,000 text messages and 50,000 emails. The attorney, if it's a good attorney, will tell you what you need at the very beginning and get that together as soon as possible.
Yeah, and Mary, a lot of this too has to deal with platforms. So when we're looking at financial platforms, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Raymond James, they have really good financial platforms that do a lot of linking of your portfolio or your credit card statements and whatnot. A lot of people don't even know how to use that. So especially if you're not even thinking about divorce or just estate planning in general, it's really nice to go and meet with a financial advisor and link up those accounts so that if something does happen to you, A, you've looked at your designated beneficiaries, but B, you have one kind of dashboard, if you will, to see all this information. It's really helpful to the attorney. And, the visibility and transparency of those platforms differs based on the size of the bank and the quality of the investor or the investment manager. So we utilize those people a lot and those platforms a lot as well.
Okay. Well, this kind of brings us to the end of our last part of our podcast, which is critical, is finding a good divorce lawyer. So, Justin, can you weigh in on what qualifies someone as a good attorney and how to go about finding someone? Andrea was saying it helps to ask friends, but, maybe they talked to Bubba 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's always be somebody that recently or a friend recently, not Baba 9 years ago, that might not be the best advice.
Bubba's a great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Love Bubba. I was thinking about, that question a little bit because it sounds self-serving when an attorney sits up here and says, well, I've got all the stars and I've got this and that. I will tell you that to me, the best relational approach to an attorney-client relationship is really a conversation. So in the consults, the reason I do paid consults again is because I like to really have a client that comes in that's serious about the consult, that's prepared, and they know that my time is critical, their time is critical, and we both set up for that, okay? It's also why I don't do a lot of in-person anymore. It's so much better for people that can sit at their desks, they have access to their own computer, they're not in my office scrolling through their phone. There's just a lot of value added to that. So, when you're picking an attorney, just raw out of the gate, clearly there's Google reviews, but to Andrea's point, 70%, I think you said, are dissatisfied with their attorney.
I think it's 73% of people say they will not refer their attorney because they didn't have an experience that they expected or wanted.
Horrible.
That's horrible. We get a lot of referrals, which speaks to your firm.
I hope.
But yeah.
But to that point, so when I look at accounting, for example, I'm not super stoked about paying my accountant to go tell me I owe the government a bunch of money, right? And in divorce litigation, and really in any litigation, any kind of person that's been through litigation, unless you're a big company and you're using litigation as a tool to move the needle for some asset acquisition, it's really stressful, it's costly, it's time consuming. I don't know too many people that just love dealing with attorneys. I hate that. But I also understand it because I've consumed litigation on businesses that I've run before.
And there are lots of black sheeps out there.
Yeah, and I also I don't like to work with clients that don't respect and like to work and engage back and forth. It's really a full-on process. And I've worked with really close friends and their wives and husbands and various people like that are in my close circle. And, it's stressful and it can become, that person can become somebody different. So I think it's really critical at the beginning stages. A, do your homework on Google, but really read the context of those reviews. See how spaced out they are. I see these firms that have 1,000 reviews in family law. I've got like 100, I think.
No, you have more than 100. You have hundreds.
But Andrea's been trying to get that number up because the Google likes that, I guess. It's kind of hard to call a client and say, hey, I know where divorce is over with, but can you go in and review me, right? And we've tried everything. We've tried sending Starbucks cards and...
Well, the thing is, though, the thing we got to remember, most people review somebody when they're pissed off.
Right.
If I have good service, I kind of assume it's good service. People are much faster in reviewing somebody when they're upset. So to get a client that was actually happy to review is kind of like, and plus at that point, they're like, I'm done with that. I don't want to ever talk about this again. And I don't want to review. So we're trying to get people now in the process to give a review. But
yeah, but I mean, I look at some firms that have been on the map for like 3 and 4 years and have thousands of reviews.
Bought them. That's a way to buy reviews.
I don't want to say that far, but it may be a situation. Really look at the types of law they practice. If they do personal injury and they pay zero,
DUIs,
or a criminal case and they get out the door faster and the job gets done. So think about the context of what you're looking at when you're looking at the reviews. So if it is divorce litigation, know that we don't sell puppies. Nobody really wants our services, and when we're done, they're kind of like, man, I'm done with you guys. I really appreciate what you did, but I don't want to do that anytime soon. So the reviews is a good place to start. I love talking to financial advisors. I like listening to counselors. Your friend base, they're going to have totally different fact patterns and experiences because they've had a different life and a different husband or a different wife, different parents. And I think that's, it's certainly helpful. I really like banks. And I don't even talk to these people, so I don't really get a whole lot of referrals from these people. I probably should go on a mission to go let them know who we are. But it is nice to look at your inner circle of what you do and who's experienced similar things in that regard. And look at socioeconomic class. I mean, I tell people all the time, I think we're very middle tier as far as cost goes. Some people don't agree with that. Some people think we're expensive. Some people think we're cheap. But if you've got, a firm that's quoting a retainer of $50,000 or whatever up front, and you don't know why or where, and you have, $10,000 to your name, do some shopping. Like, it's not rocket science. There's definitely critical points in a case that require larger ticket retainers. I don't like that for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to get into now. But look at the the who, what, when, where, and why of what they're going to do in the short term. They should be able to lay out the temporary orders, kind of the costs of that, the structure of that. You should be able to get some feedback. How many cases have they done? Don't ask questions like how long have they been in practice. My biggest pet peeve of lawyers is they go, well, I've been practicing law 20 years. I'm like, yeah, this person's been doing it too, and they lap you. So don't just get stuck in the general mindset. It really needs to be good communication. They need to be responsive. They need to be punctual. And that goes into the initial finding, and we're going to get into what happens while you're in the course of litigation later. But that's the initial finding of the attorney. Reviews-wise, I do think that in order to get peer reviews and to stay recognized, things like super lawyers, you can't just jump into that thing. I know people think lawyers just run around flashing money to buy reviews, but they do have criteria. And usually, even if they're getting their buddies to vote for them or whatever, they're taking the time to do that. And then oftentimes people behind closed doors just won't do it. They won't review another attorney if they don't like them, even if they're being called upon to ask for it. So don't just discount those reviews. And then I think proximity to where you are. You're not going to be able to get a lot of feedback from judges and whatnot, but I think other lawyers in other spaces are a great resource and tool. And you're not going to have a whole lot of time, and you're going to be very confused about information overload. And so I think
that's what I would say. In finding an attorney, having a consultation to me is like dating somebody. Because have a conversation with the person, or meet and greet like when you go dating, because I'm going to have a feel for the person, and I want to make sure that they listen to me, not bombard me and throw up on me with all kinds of legal terms, because I don't understand those legal terms unless you've been through it 5 times. You will not understand. Me even working for you still have questions about certain things, and sometimes you say something to me, it's like, what does that mean? Never heard it before. So even though I've been in this industry for a long time. So I think talk to somebody, get a feel for the person, feel whether they're honest with you, whether they actually looked at your case or whether they just give you a standard answer. We have people calling saying, why would I have a consultation for you to just tell me whether you can take my case? And many consultations out there are like that. Or we can take your case, no matter what you have. They don't even listen to your entire case. You don't lay out your case. So that's a for me, that would be a super red flag when they don't listen to me. And then communication, because I would ask the question, how fast do you respond to me if I have a question? So, of course, the attorney is not only handling your case. There's going to be other cases. But if I can get a guideline, like if I send you an email or I talk to you or I call you, how long will it take for you to get back to me and have a solid answer? If they say 24 hours, 48 hours, I think you need to understand what their priorities are. They might say something that's not true, but I can at least ask that question. And then I would also find out what kind of technology they're using. How many people are in this office? Because if I have the one-man show there and he works by himself and doesn't even have a paralegal or one attorney and one paralegal and he's desperate for work, chances are I'm not going to get my stuff answered really fast. And technology, are they on top of everything that's out there? Are they using a chat on the website? You can see that on the website. Are they giving any information? Also, what you said earlier, are they, besides technology, are they giving me good information how much my case potentially can cost? People quote, when we have the all time, $3,500 to get started. Well, what does that mean to get started? How long will that last me? Are you going to come back and ask me for another $30,000 within the next year? People do that. They just get you into the door with this lower retainer. We get this all the time. Well, the guy across the street is charging me $5,000 and you do $7,500. Okay, but did he listen to your case? Did he ask you how much property you have, how many kids you have, all those things? So I think you get a lot of information in the first contact with an attorney, and then go somewhere else and talk to somebody else, and then
I love that. I mean, I'm like shop it, okay? Because if we do a consult, and I believe I do it as well as I think I do, which sounds arrogant. I promise you I'm not, but I've done it a lot, and I've worked with a lot of people. If somebody does it better and you feel like there's a better relationship, I promise you probably need to go with a little bit of your gut there, right? By the same token, I've talked a million miles a minute, and we've got a very limited window to get questions answered. So if you need some help with something, don't hesitate to schedule another consult, right? Even though
prepare yourself.
Or prepare.
Because on your website, we put so much information out there already for people to read. Like the blog, there is so much. There's a search. You can say being served. We can ask about divorce process. You can do a lot of research. Like you said, come prepared. Read all that stuff. And then make a list of questions you have. And then when they get on the phone with you or with Ashley, and then they talk, then I have more detailed information. And then the conversation is going to be much better because I kind of like did my homework already. And then I can, asking a detailed question, then I can see, is he was blowing hot air or is he actually answering me my questions? What does this mean? What does that mean? So you need to be prepared.
And I tell people in almost every consult, I'm going to answer most of your questions before you ask them. And that sounds a little bit arrogant again. It's not. It is. I have a very structured way I do my consults. Okay. So when you have your list of questions, don't just be ready to fire off the question. Listen to the attorney when you're going through it, because they're going to guide you. A good attorney that knows what they're doing is going to guide you down the consult process and answer way more questions throughout the course than you even thought of. By the same token, if they are talking in legalese or too fast or something, there's no dumb question. It is a business interview. So we say, Andrea says it to our team all the time, raise your hand. If you got a problem, raise your hand. It's the same thing in the consult. Correct. Just stop, take a breath. It's not like if you're going 4 minutes over like we're doing on this podcast, that the world is going to come to an end. And if they need to reschedule you or you need additional follow-up because the case is more complex, don't hesitate to do that, because $200 or whatever is not 20,000 or 30,000, and it's not a year of your time.
And I rather pay the $200 and then know whether this person, like that's why dating is probably a good example. I rather pay the $200 and know whether this is going to be a good match than hire and make a comparison with somebody else. Now I might have spent $400, but then I have a good feeling that this is the right person for me, instead of trying to save the $200 at the front, or even maybe two consultations to get all my questions answered, and then end up with an attorney that is not responsive or is not skilled enough or is just blowing hot air or whatever, not giving me all the information, doesn't lay out the process, is shooting from the hip. I don't want that. That's your life on the line. So It's going to cost you some money to find the right one, I think, in going around
And
and
it's
doing the
worth it.
research, but it's necessary.
Yeah, definitely worth it. So, kind of as we wrap up here, there's a couple of things that you had said, that you want a client, that you like the clients that are invested as much in the process as the attorney is. So, as the client prepares for the consult with you, which I think it's also important to point out again that when you do a consult, it's case specific. It's not just like, oh, we're going to decide whether or not we want to do business with you. No, it's you guys look into their case before you have that consultation. But kind of in closing, any thoughts on how a client should prepare for that initial consultation with you to get the most out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I said, I feel like I drive a lot of the consults. So I don't want clients to. I oftentimes tell them, you don't need to write anything down. We're going to help you through this time and time again. You don't need to memorize everything I'm saying. We're going to just kind of go broad stroke on what the process looks like. But I need to dissect what the 50,000 foot view or 30,000 foot view of your estate looks like, or the kid issues. And I'll get to those points as I'm going down. The main thing that I'm looking for when I'm doing the consult, and kind of an answer to your question, but I am driving the consult, is that if I ask you, how old is your child, and you start in on all this other stuff, right? And that keeps happening over and over again. I'm gauging you and you're gauging me, right? I'm looking at, can we make progress with this person? So, or will they listen, or do they just have some action item agenda that they're hell-bent on? Because, you need a good attorney to lead you. And so if in the consult you have some degree of preparation, i.e., you know what the main big ticket items are that are your really frustration points. You kind of know what your expectations are with respect to, do you want primary conservatorship? Do you want to live in the house? Those questions will broad stroke the answers to those. I'm not going to give you finite legal advice without seeing inventories and timelines and doing the work to work it up. But I can tell you within a relative degree of certainty what most courts would do given the fact pattern that you've given me, and then we'll dive into it deeper. So I think just really having a clear understanding of what it is that you want, and does the punishment fit the crime, or does the fact pattern fit the case that you're looking for? And so when you come in and say, I want him to have no access or supervised access, immediately I'm going, okay, we'll get to that in just a second, as an example. But tell me kind of what issues you're having. And then if you start in, well, he takes the child to McDonald's and all that stuff, and we're probably not going to ever get on the same page about relief and whatnot. And so I may try to steer you into some directions that you will feel like, this isn't my person. And that's by design. So I would say the biggest thing is just kind of getting your summary of your thoughts, making sure you don't have, your boss coming in or your kids coming in, thinking about your schedule and making that 30 minutes really impactful. And then if we have to refer to something that I'm going to ask kind of valuation of your house. I'm going to ask things about, do you have any retirement accounts? Do you know where your bank statements are? Have just some general understanding of your life, but I'm going to really wrap that up anyway. Okay. So don't go in with just too much thought process into what do I need to bring. It's just really having the patience and the listening and the timing. And, I've had people show up wasted. So don't do that. So it's
That's
just
not a good thing.
Yeah, it's just use common sense for the most part.
Yeah.
And you have turned, and that's what I always liked, that you have turned people away for
Absolutely.
for personality, because it's not a match, because they don't listen. Right? They don't listen. They know everything better. They don't have a legal degree, but they think they know everything better.
Yeah.
That might not be the right client, and other people too. When you said this case, like you said, this example you gave, there's lots of issues with the kids, and I want a modification, and the only issue you have is that they don't feed the kid the same stuff that you want to feed the kid. That is not grounds for anything, and you would spend thousands of dollars to go to court. You turn them away, and I think that's also when you look for an attorney, get a feel for that too. Are they desperate for business? That they are yes-sayers on the phone and they just want to bring you in, or are they actually discussing your case with you and potentially saying, this might not work? That's also a good sign that they listen to you.
Yeah, you want them to be honest with you too.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, but it's not everybody. It's like there's people
you
out
don't
there
want a
that
yes
don't.
lawyer.
Yeah, no, you don't.
It's not always a good thing.
No.
So any final thoughts on this topic regarding what you should do immediately after you've been served?
Not on the service piece, but I would say that if you're in a consult and the attorney is kind of steering you away from litigation or saying that they're not the right fit, don't be mad about that. Okay, there are plenty of attorneys who will take your money and plenty of attorneys who will file a case. So really good qualified attorneys will analyze a case, and we can do it in much shorter time period than you can imagine. So what I would suggest is if the attorney is saying it's not the right time or we may not be the right fit, don't take that as just I wasted my money on a consult. I hear that sometimes that people are just like, well, I paid money for this consult and they wouldn't take my case. Well, good. That may mean you don't have one, or it may mean that they've just saved you from yourself in that relationship and it's not going to go well, and you're going to spend a bunch of money on somebody you don't like. So really be cognizant of the fact that really good attorneys have hearts and they're good business people. They're not all great, and you just really got to do your homework.
And I would add to, when you get served, one important thing is take care of yourself. I mean, be prepared for emotional turmoil, no matter how strong you are as a male or female. Your marriage, no matter how long it was, you love that person at some point, and now you're going to go separate ways. That is an emotional time of your life. Be prepared, and that's why I say surround yourself with people that love you. Find a counselor that can help you through those stages and work with you from the very beginning. Your attorney is not your counselor, and they're not trained in listening to you, all the stuff that's going on. Have a plus it's too expensive to tell your lawyer all that stuff. Find a good counselor. Surround yourself with people that love you, that can support you and catch you when you fall, because it's going to happen. Like I said earlier, the rug is pulled underneath your feet, especially for females. So be careful that to not go down to this depressive
Substance
stage.
recluse mode.
Yeah, exactly. Just take care of yourself. Continue to go to the gym. If you go to the gym, continue to eat healthy. It's going to be a hard time of your life, and then there's light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to take care of yourself during this process. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about in our previous podcast. That'd be a good one to check out.
Why does an attorney have some health guy on here?
Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of reasons.
Because it's important.
Yeah, got to take care of yourself. So if you live in Texas and would like to connect with the Sisemore Law Firm, you can reach the firm at 817-336-4444 or visit lawyerdfw.com. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.